Welcome, everybody. This is the 64th episode of Nicola Valley Talks, the podcast brought to you by Tourism Nicola Valley and Experience Nicola Valley and Experience Merritt, the award-winning program developed by A Canada Marketing. Nicola Valley Talk is broadcast every Thursday at 7 p.m. And once a month, the last Thursday of every month, we bring you a special edition of Nicola Valley Talks, and we call that Off the Clock City Talk. And so, again, here we are to give you some information about economic development as it applies to the city of Merritt. So we do have a few basic things that we talk about before we get started, so everybody knows kind of what we're up to and what we're expecting from you and what you can expect from us. So basically, what we're doing is we're providing information. We're not here to debate issues. We're just here to provide you information based on facts. They're based in legislation, and therefore, we won't really be debating the issues. And also, you're welcome to leave comments in the chat room. However, we won't be looking at any negative ones. So only bring us your positive thoughts, and hopefully we'll have a minute to get to you. And the other thing I just mentioned was the posting in the chat room. That gives us a kind of an indication of what's going on. So here we go. We have two guests tonight, and they're our regulars. We have Councillor Tony Luck and Councillor Melvina White. So we will bring on Melvina. And Melvina, can you give us a little bit of a background on yourself? I know we've had this little summary the last 4 times, but people are new to our broadcast. Every week we get more and more people, so we need to introduce you again. So Melvina, can you give us a little quick background?
My name is Melvina White. I'm a city councillor and the vice president of Tourism Nicola Valley. And I've been in Merritt now about 20 years, and it's a great place to live and having fun.
Okay, so behind the scenes on this great program, we have Tanya Stewart, and she's running the background mechanics so that we can have this little discussion. And Melvina has given us a little breakdown of her, and Tony will now do the same.
Hi, Tom. Good evening. It's nice to be here again. Like I've said many times, it's really nice for Experience Nicola Valley to run this podcast, and I think it's a really valuable source. So I want to thank them again for doing this. My name is Tony Luck. I am also a city councillor here in Merritt and a local realtor as well. My wife and I moved to Merritt. Oh, I should include my mother too. My mother moved with us to Merritt about 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago now. We enjoy it. We love it here. After 62 years in the lower mainland, we wanted to come to the blue skies and sunshine of the Nicola Valley and Merritt. So we're really enjoying it here. I think, Tom, you also asked is why this topic we're going to discuss today is important, and I think it really is important because sometimes economic growth can be a scary thing for a lot of people because they think economic growth and development is going to take over their city and do things like that. But I think when we look at any town or city, when we see economic growth is low, fewer people have disposable income, so they can buy less and give local companies less business. So as a result, these businesses struggle to grow. And I think we've seen that over the last little while here in Merritt, as businesses are struggling. So I think this is a very timely topic about talking about economic growth and the importance of it in a community to improve our standard of living and do different things. So I'm really excited to be here tonight, Tom. So thank you.
And it's the economic development, Tony, is a component that drives the economic growth, creating family wages, jobs, facilitating an improved quality of life, basically.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And it's important that we understand exactly what economic development means and what is included, and realize that it is a continuous work in progress. It's not just an overnight thing.
Nope. Yeah, it takes a lot of planning and everything to get good economic growth going in our community, that's for sure. Finding all those key components that make it successful. And getting buy-in from the community and getting as much input from the community as well, which we'll discuss as we go through this, Melvina, for sure.
Yeah.
So I should give a little background. You guys jumped a little bit ahead of me because I jumped a little bit ahead of you. So, well,
that's all right.
I think we're on track now.
So I just like to put in, like, rural communities are crucial to the economic success of British Columbia, contributing 9.5% of the 30% of the country's small rural communities' GDP, gross domestic product. Every community is different and has their own unique challenges. It is important every community recognizes their own economic weakness and develop a robust economic development strategy. So both Melvina and Tony have told us why economic development is important. And so we're going to go on to the next area, and I'll give a little bit of lead in on this one too. Many small and mid-sized rural communities around BC are struggling for many reasons. Some of the challenges have shaken the foundation of these communities, including Merritt, leaving people without jobs and the communities without a healthy tax base. My question for both of you is twofold. Melvina, could you share with us what exactly is economic development and what is the legislation that allows for economic development?
Well, some of the provincial regulations have been developed regarding concurrent authority, meaning municipalities and the provincial government have a shared interest in regulating some activities such as roads, infrastructure, community services, policing, etc. Section 9 of the Community Charter provides that a minister's regulation may establish matters for which local governments may exercise their concurrent regulatory authority without provincial involvement, that restrict or set conditions for the exercise of that authority, specify those matters subject to the responsible minister's approval, as well as other legislation may restrict a local government's activities within a sphere of the concurrent authority. Economic development in government is a concerted effort on the part of the responsible governing body in a city or community to influence the direction of private sector investment toward opportunities that can lead to sustained economic growth. Community development is a process for making a community a better place to live and work. And although all levels of government are involved to some degree, local and regional governments play crucial roles in economic development in their communities. The local provincial government has the local government has a critical role to play in assisting economic development through strategic land use planning, direct financial support to economic development initiatives, and infrastructure investment. Even though the local governing bodies are the leaders in a community's economic development plan, the vision and the process must include the people who live and work in the community. The local government's job is to facilitate people, provide information and opportunities, and even remove roadblocks wherever possible. They need to focus on industry, diversification to diversify the economy, reducing vulnerability to a single industry. Innovation, skills, entrepreneurship, and social cohesion are key drivers of growth and essential goals of effective economic development strategies, which Tony will cover cover this area a little more in detail in his strategy planning. Clearly, economic development efforts are important to a community, and even more so in rural communities due to their economic challenges. Building relationships and partnerships with provincial and federal government organizations is crucial to some economic development successes. So these are all important points as to how the economic development works between the governments and the local government, and in our case, TNRD, regional government. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Melvina. Hey, Tony, could you talk to us about preparing an economic development strategy?
Absolutely, Tom. Just give you a quick stat here about cities and their importance to economic development. In 2007, just 380 cities around the world were responsible for half of the global GDP. So that, just 380 cities. Researchers projected that by 2025, 600 cities will account for over 60% of the global GDP. So that's huge numbers. Cities are very, very important to the economic viability of the world we live in. Recently, many small and mid-sized cities have been struggling to survive, and Merritt is no different. A lot of towns and cities like Merritt have had economies built largely on those single economic sectors, and we're no strangers to that, as we've been our economies basically has been logging, mining, and ranching in the past, and all of these are somewhat on decline. Even ranching is on decline as people as sectors transform and people change. Changing circumstances of those caused by resource depletion, globalization, or shift in consumer preferences and demands can shake the economic foundation of many communities, leaving people without jobs and cities without a healthy tax base, I think, as you pointed out earlier, Tom. So it's really, really important that cities sit down and do some economic renewal. So economic renewal and a tailor-made economic strategy are essential for regions and cities to cope with all of these challenges that we have. And I think most of us understand them, especially the big one has been technological change over the last number of decades and how much that's had an impact on our cities and our jobs and that. The key starting point for such a strategy is a profound understanding of the changes ahead in relation to the specific capabilities and qualities of the region or a city. The successful local or regional economic development strategy consists of a mix of policies that help develop the growth in the community. This mix can includes improvements of the economic structure, development of attractive businesses and living environments, building sustainability and human capital development, talent and education. I'll talk a little bit more about that a little later on. So the decision to create an economic development strategy can arise from a variety of circumstances in the community. Obviously, the big one is our tax base is eroding, jobs are eroding, and people are leaving the community. Those are huge factors right there because we haven't got investment. So communities might create an economic development strategy in the wake of a crisis or downturn in the economy, like a major employer shutting down, a natural disaster, or need to clean up a site with contaminated soil or groundwater. So it's not just any one thing. It can be a number of reasons. We go through the strategic planning, the planning process to improve our economy. To help older neighborhoods, including the downtown, that suffer from long-term disinvestment. And you know that downtown improvement's been on the radar for quite a number of years now, and that should be part of a strategic plan as well. The viability of a downtown helps the economy and the public, and to take advantage of civic event or opportunities such as a major infrastructure investment. I think in the Trans Mountain Oil Pipeline or a cogeneration plant that we've come here. You want to maybe change focus of the way your economy is working, or how now you've got an investment that could attract people. So how does that work? So some basics of a strategic plan, a development of a city and regional strategy should include some key variables, such as analysis of the economic profile of the city and its current strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, more commonly known as a SWOT analysis, where you go in and you can actually look at the city's strength. Merritt, what is our strength here? Blue skies, sunshine, nice weather, natural environment, those kind of things. You look at your weaknesses and find out what's weak there, and what our opportunities are. Opportunity-wise, we're on the point of 5 highways, centrally located, and some of the threats that we might have, right? Technology changes and people moving away, things like that. Another one is analysis of relevant trends. For example, how can innovation policies enhance development, and how to respond to demographic and labor market shifts? And we've seen that with, as I talked about a little earlier, is how industries change and consumer demands change and things like that. How do we adjust? How do we quickly change for those things? And then if those aren't happening, a mill gets shut down. What are we doing with the labor? What can we do to retrain those kind of development of a challenging long-term vision for the next 10 to 15 years that can be characterized as both realistic but also ambitious. Let's think outside the box. What else can we do here? How do we change your downtown? What kind of businesses can we leave there? And the final one was establishing concrete objectives and milestones that not only do we put these things in place, but how do we measure them? What are the key measurements? KPIs we call, or key performance indicators. Are we meeting the goals and objectives that we set for there? Now, that's just part of the strategic plan. Very, very important. We had a strategic plan in place a number of years ago, but like a lot of things, we find that it's out of date. They need to be updated and changed regularly. And right now, the City of Merritt is going through the process of doing a new strategic economic plan. And Stephanie Moore, who is our COVID economic recovery manager, we managed to be able to hire here through a grant that we're able to get, is in the process of going through that exercise and to be able to develop a new strategic plan. And one of the things that's important about a strategic plan for a city as well is to get as many people in the community involved in that. And I know that Stephanie's been reaching out to people in the community to get them involved, to come out and mention some things that they'd like to see in that and be part of the process. So right now, Tom, I'd like to encourage anybody in our community that's listening to definitely be involved in that, and send Stephanie Moore some emails, or send her an email, let her know if they've got any ideas for that. So that would be really good. Thanks, Tom.
Okay, thanks, Tony. Tourism has been growing steadily over the past few decades and already forms a major component of the economies of many rural BC communities. Tourism can also be an effective community marketing tool to introduce and entice visitors who may then consider moving to the community. Melvina, communities are obviously looking to diversify their economy. Could you share with us how tourism can play a role in the economic diversification?
I always like to look at the whole picture as a wheel with a bunch of spokes in it and different things to make the community work. And tourism is a major part of one of those spokes. Rural tourism can be defined as a country experience which encompasses a wide range of attractions and activities that take place in agricultural or non-urban areas. Its essential characteristics include wide open spaces, low levels of tourism development, and opportunities for visitors to directly experience agricultural and/or natural environments. Rural tourism has many potential benefits for including employment growth, an expanded economic base, repopulation, social improvement, and revitalization of local crafts. The extent to which these benefits are realized remains in the subject of much debate. Some of the benefits of rural tourism allows the creation of a replacement source of income in the non-agricultural section for rural dwellers. The added income from rural tourism can contribute to the revival of lost folk art and handicrafts. An example of this would be the local farmers market that features, among locally grown organic produce, various artisan and crafter vendors. With such vendors such as jewelry makers and a vibrant, well put together farmers market will attract visitors from all over the region. Rural tourism helps in the development of rural areas and living standards of host communities. Some importance and benefits of rural tourism spurs infrastructure development in rural areas. Festivals and large outdoor events are another major attraction for rural communities. Nicola Valley is fortunate to have the infrastructure we have in order to accommodate guests in the thousands for the different festivals that we host. Rural tourism development should be considered with all financial and development plans and other efforts that have to be done in order to support it. Tourism development in rural areas should be strategically planned, and its negative effects on nature and social culture environment of tourism areas should be limited. The adventure activities included in rural tourism is unlimited. Hiking, fishing, summer and winter activities, biking, bird watching, stargazing, ATVing, motorbiking, and the list is unlimited. The extent to which these benefits are realized remains a subject of much debate. Certainly, there is evidence to support the claim that as a vehicle of economic growth and diversification, tourism can make an important contribution to rural incomes, both at the level of the tourism operators and more widely in the local economy. Merritt has everything to offer for rural tourism. We have the inventory and the marketing. We need the tourism businesses such as guides for the different activities. The only thing that we're lacking. Tourism is not the answer for all rural problems, but it has a number of positive attractions. It is one of many opportunities that rural communities might consider to improve productivity and income. And I think it's a very important part of any rural community, actually. And thanks, Tom.
Okay, thanks, Melvina. So, Tony, economic development data refers to economic growth and investment. Could you please describe the difference between the two or how they go hand in hand?
Absolutely, Tom. Just before I start that, I'd just like to validate what Mel was saying. It was tourism that brought me to Merritt. 30 some odd years ago, I used to recreate in the back hills here with my children and my family. And I said many years ago, I said, I want to live in Merritt one day. And voila, here I am. So tourism is a huge economic driver for many people. So economic growth and investment, two important things. So economic growth is kind of like the measure of what's going on, things like GDP. And I'm going to, I'll confuse a lot of people here, and I'm just going to give you the formula for GDP and how government figures that out. And GDP equals C plus I plus G plus X minus M. So, Tony, what are you talking about? So C is usually for consumption, what consumers and people spend in the economy in that, plus the investment of what investments are put into an economy, and then the spending and investments that big government does. And then, of course, the last one is exports minus imports. So X minus M is exports minus imports, and the net effect of that. So, when we talk about positive imports or positive exports is a good thing. That helps us increase our GDP, which is the standard of living that we get out of the economic growth that we see. So economic growth is an increase in an economy's ability compared to past periods to produce goods and services. Economic growth is measured by the change in the gross domestic product. That was, as I was stating. So we often see on a monthly basis, oh, the GDP was up or the GDP was down, right? And that's how we measure the wealth of a nation, or how well we do as individuals as well. Because if the GDP per capita goes down, that means we are not as well off as we were maybe the month before. So it's very, very important to look at those numbers and understand them in the scheme of things. If a country has a GDP of 2.5% for the year, it means that economic growth for the country rose by 2.5% from a year earlier. In order to determine how human capital impacts growth, we must first look at two key drivers of economic growth in the economy. So we're going to look at a couple of key drivers in there that are important. As examples, there's a number of them, but we'll look at a couple here that are really important. One of them, of course, is business investment, and we looked at that in the formula. So when a city like Merritt wants to do its economic planning, we are looking at investment. We are looking for people to come here and build factories so they can provide jobs for the people and everything. And that part of the GDP, as we get those investments in, that improves the economy, local economy. It helps our local businesses. It helps us improve our standard of living so that we can go save more or buy more and that kind of thing. So it's really important. So the increased GDP growth from consumer spending leads to improvement in business conditions. As companies become more profitable, they tend to invest more money into their businesses to create future growth. Business investment, so this is the investment piece, Tom, we were talking about, can include new equipment and technologies purchases. The investment business may make are called capital investments for the most term. And so we want capital investments here. I think of one of the latest capital investments we've had is here, Barkman's Concrete out on Midday Valley Road. A huge investment there. Those people that come in here invested in our community, going to provide some jobs, going to provide some taxes and capital infrastructure. So capital investments, which require large outlays of capital or cash, are designed to boost the company's productivity and profits in the long term and improve local economy well. Now, one of the things we sometimes don't think about is human capital. Human capital is an investment as well, believe it or not. And as the more reading I did as I'm looking at this, it's a very key component, especially nowadays where technology is playing a huge role in increasing our productivity as individuals and people. And as a company has stronger productivity, their income and their per capita growth goes up, and their pro capital income also goes up, or standard of living goes up. Human capital is positively correlated to economic growth, since investments tends to boost productivity. The process of educating a workforce is a type of investment, but instead of capital investments such as equipment, the investment is human capital. So here I look at NVIT sitting on the hill here. That is an important economic driver in our community. It's increasing the education levels of individuals, and it's been proven in many well, here I'll get to it here. Investing in workers has had a track record of creating better employment conditions in economies throughout the world. If employment is improving, consumer spending rises, leading to increased revenue for companies and additional business investments. So the education attainment levels of a population is the single most important factor shaping regional economic success. It can explain fully 60% of the variations in per capita income. So the higher the education level is in a city, the overall, they're going to be able to explain, look at your income level, and it's correlated to that education. So as we go, I'll step back one question, Tom, as we look at the strategic planning, how we improve the education levels in our community or any community is really important to having a good GDP and growth and a standard of living in the future. So MVIT is going to play an important role in that, and it should through our strategic planning. A couple of the other, another one, just to give you a bit of some validation, and in 2020, the OECD found that countries with people who had grammar and high school educations experienced an employment rate among 25 to 34-year-olds of 72% for women and 72% for men and 45% for women. However, those who had colleges or graduate education levels experienced an employment rate of 89% for men and 81% for women. So quite an uptick from high school education alone. Another one of the economic or investments that we can do in the economy is called placemaking. Placemaking is referred to the process of making our public and city realm areas livable and comfortable and sustainable in our community. So placemaking is important because talent is mobile today. So one of the pieces of that strategic planning is, how do we get people to stay here, or how do we attract people? And that's an important piece of the investment as well. Talented workers have choices of where they live and are increasingly exercising the choices, disproportionately choosing to live in places that build urban communities. The number of college-educated young adults is increasing twice as fast in close-in urban neighborhoods as in the rest of metropolitan areas. That's driven by growing demands for dense, diverse, interesting, transit-served, bikeable, walkable neighborhoods. Companies are increasingly moving to be close to the workers living in or seeking these neighborhoods. Placemaking is essential to attracting and anchoring talent. So we want to anchor, we want to bring people here, we want to give them a reason to be here in Merritt and build those economies and help us. And when we do that, everybody benefits from those investments in the community. So those are just a few examples of some investments we can make in the community, Tom.
Thanks, Tony. Okay, so I'm lost my place. Here we go.
That's okay.
Economic growth is the precursor and prerequisite for economic development. It is the subset of economic development. Economic development comes from economic growth. It is a positive impact of economic growth. Tony, could you provide to the audience some examples of the difference between economic growth and economic development?
Okay, I think I explained a little bit about economic growth, and it's kind of like the metrics that we're looking at. But economic growth is a narrow concept that is a much narrower concept than economic development. It's an increase in a country's real level of national output, and I gave you the formula for that already, which can be caused by an increase in the quality of resources, i.e. education, increase of the quantity of resources, and improvements in technology, or in another way to increase the value of goods and services produced by every sector of the economy. Economic growth can be measured by an increase in the country's GDP. So if we get more investment, be it in placemaking, as I discussed, in housing and in the infrastructure in the city, in schooling and those kind of things, we can increase those indicators, that economic growth indicators that show that we're having improvement within our economy. Really important things, and that's how we measure things. Remember, I talked, and the first thing I said was about key KPIs, key performance indicators, and that's what these are, is key performance indicators kind of thing. How do we measure? How do we know we're improving? How do we know we're getting better, kind of thing, right? So economic development is a normative concept. It applies to the context of people's sense of morality, right and wrong, good and bad. So the definition of economic development given by a leading economist, Michael Todorov, is an increase in living standards. And I think I've touched on those a little bit, right? Improvement in self-esteem needs. So that would be, is my community a good place to live? Am I enjoying living here? Am I getting out of my community and the environment what I want to get, right? Does that build my ego, my self-esteem living here? And freedom from oppression, as well as greater choices in what we can do, right? The more income we have, the better off we are, the more choices we have in what we can purchase and what we can buy and how we can invest and save, right? The most accurate method for measuring development is the Human Development Index, and that index was developed so that we can find out how humans are actually doing. It's another paralleling index that helps us see how our standard of living is improving or not. And it takes into account the literacy rates and life expectancies, which affect productivity. And we know that the happier we are, the more engaged in our community, the higher standard of living we have, is that we're going to have our life expectancy obviously goes up because we're able to eat better, be more healthy, and those kind of things. So it's all these things are all tied together, Tom. I don't think there's ever any one of them is exclusively independent of each other. They're all kind of working together here as we can do this. So when we do the strategic plan, as I talked about earlier, is that we take all these things into consideration. What is the end goal of these? Life expectancy. It also leads to the creation of more opportunities in the sectors of education, healthcare, employment, and the conservation of the environment. It implies an increase in the per capita income of every citizen. Now, some of these measurements have a little bit have been very fluid, and I thought about the conservation of the environment. I think about 100 years ago when people were doing strategic plans, I don't even know if they did them 100 years ago, but as businesses grew and everything, the environment is probably one of the least things thought about. So now it's an important factor when we look at these human index, this human development index, and the things we look at in cities as well, right? So it's in place. So some of these numbers become fluid. Just going back to economic growth then, does not take into account the size of the informal economy. Informal economy is also known as the black economy, which is unrecorded economic activity. So sometimes we have in economies, even though we have these indexes and the growth and everything, those aren't measured because technically they're not supposed to be existing. So it doesn't include those. But I think we know that some of that goes on from the research that I've done. So some of those things go on, and they also have an effect on that, right? So yeah, I think it's really important understanding the growth and the economy and development, and so it's an important piece of making a better life and society for us all. It's not about cutting all the trees down or pulling all the coal out. It's much more than that. It's educating people and having a community that has a standard of living that we're all comfortable in. It's reducing poverty and homelessness, and it all works together. It's all like a big jigsaw puzzle that comes together and pulls it all together, Tom. So hope that helps.
Okay, thanks, Tony. So Melvina, where economic development planning can have some negative impacts on a community, could you give us some examples of why an economic development plan may fail?
What happened to me?
First of all, a poor economic development plan is a plan for failure, right off the top of the chart. A poor plan creates uncertainty in forecasts about economic conditions, market conditions, prospects, and expected behavior of economic agents. Example, bankers, realtors, etc. It modifies the content of economic decisions, both in the private and public sector, either because goals are not clear or because government involvement has been changed and the changes were not detailed or communicated properly. Information and intervention also exist in unplanned economies, and it appears the effect the gains of the plan are meant to have are not at all evident. And that pretty much sums it up. If the plan isn't clear and communicated to everybody that's relying on it for their decisions, because anybody that's coming into the community, the first thing that they want to see is the economic development plan or the OCP, and if those aren't put together properly, they're liable to say, well, I'm not hanging around here. I might as well go to Kelowna, Kamloops, wherever. So a poorly put together plan can destroy the community, actually. And thanks, Tom.
Okay, well, that's the end of our sort of formal questions. And usually at this time, I do a little summary. This topic is more nebulous than the previous ones. The other ones, there was a section in the Local Government Act that governed it, and we could talk about that. But economic development is, as Melvina pointed out, a process of gathering all the tools that are scattered throughout the Local Government Act and preparing a plan. And that plan would be based on things like the official community plan, their zoning plan, and all these other tools that are in the city's toolbox to promote development. And economic growth is basically a measurement of how successful we are in our economic development, which is a result of proper planning. And of course, the reason why we want to do that is we want to make our community a great place to live, great place to play, great place to learn. So through economic development, we can make Merritt an amazing, amazing place. And we're already, the city's already moving towards some of that stuff. And there are other organizations out in the community, such as Tourism Nicola Valley, Community Futures, the Chamber of Commerce. There's lots of partnerships that would go into making our economic development plan, and also the citizens, because it's their home and they want a say in how their home develops. So this topic is really timely, and I hope our viewers got some insight on how this all can unfold. And again, as I said earlier, there's no specific legislation that deals precisely with economic development, but through partnerships with the provincial government, the federal government, and our community businesses and associations and the citizens, we can come up with a plan that will bode well for the future of Merritt. So again, before we leave, Tony and Melvina, do you have anything else you want to throw in the hopper here? Melvina?
That was a great summary, Tom.
Yes,
Absolutely, yeah. There's many, many tools for the city to use to bring this together in this economic development. It's very, very important for a community to raise us all up, right? Yeah.
Melvina?
I'd just like to read a comment here from Greg Gerard that about the rural tourism. Rural tourism has a high potential to stimulate local economic growth and social change because of its complementarity with other economic activities, its contribution to GDP and job creation, and its capacity to promote the dispersal of demand in time, fight seasonality, and along a wider territory. And I think that's a pretty good summary of the tourism section, and also the contribution of tourism to the GDP, which is, I mean, that's a whole nother topic, but the numbers that tourism contribute to the GDP are huge. But we could be on this topic for like 3 days and still not cover it all.
Melv, I've got a question for you. Where's the ranking of tourism in, like mining, forestry, tourism? Do you know the ranking where tourism is in the province? I think it's third or fourth economic drive in the province.
It is. It's when I was looking at those GDP contributions, it's like number 4 or something, I think 3 or 4 in there. Like it's in the billions of dollars that's contributed to our national GDP.
It's a shame because I think a lot of people think that tourism is like a low-paying industry, low-paying industry that that's not like mining or forestry, but overall it's a huge driver because a lot of those businesses, especially tourism, are a lot of small mom and pop operations, and they do quite well, and they add huge numbers to our economy.
I know that when we first started campaigning for council, somebody had said that tourism was all minimum wage paying jobs, and they aren't. The tourism operators, the different operators that we need for tourism, the guides, I mean, the list goes on, and it's not minimum wage jobs. And the tourism industry contributed nearly $1.7 billion in provincial taxes in 2018. So there's some huge numbers in that are that are contributed from tourism, and that's that's why the whole tourism industry across the province with this COVID thing, it's killing them. We're gone from billions of dollars down to like a few million, and it's not a great economic thing for our country, that's for sure.
No, we got to get it back on its feet as quick as we can.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of opportunities in the Merritt area, Tom, for tourism. There's a lot of key areas.
Starbucks has just announced that they're having trouble getting staff, so they're immediately raising all their rates by $4 an hour.
Wow.
So even though they were considered low-paying jobs, they are moving up. as
Yeah.
more demand for their services becomes, and the more important the sector becomes, the wages will adjust.
Well, and
Absolutely, Tom. If you look at some of the statistics, the economic growth statistics and things like that, wage growth has been very, very subpar the last decade. So it's about time.
Starbucks, I mean, some of those different businesses have paid more than minimum wage. Maybe not to start, but Starbucks was one that paid beyond minimum wage plus benefits and all the perks that go along with it. And so I don't know where it's all going as far as wages go, but
A friend of mine sent me a picture from Fort St. John on a on a Tim Hortons door saying now hiring $19.95 per hour. And that was 2016, 2017, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
So, that's not minimum wage, even in today's speak.
no.
No.
So
And Tim Hortons in some of those areas in those northern communities, they've been paying humongous wages for the last 10 years.
Yeah. So anyway, I guess we have a bit of a time crunch. And so I'm assuming you've had your say, and
I have.
Thank you for your time and contribution. And we'll have to come up with our next topic for the end of November.
Can we tell them, Melba?
Yeah. Well,
well, I think our next topics, because we're going into budgeting season, Tom, we're going to try to give you the basics of municipal budgeting.
Hey, that's something I know about.
Yeah, there you go. So we're going to have you produce the questions for us.
I did it for 25 years.
Put us in the hot seat, Tom.
All righty. I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, should be good.
Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
And I want to thank all our viewers out there for joining us. It's been a treat to meet you all again, and welcoming new viewers. And we hope to see you next November for our last Thursday of the month for Off the Clock City Talk, where we discuss issues important to the city and its residents. So good night, and we'll see you soon.